Hi everyone. So for my final case study project, I chose to look at Gina, who is a 17-year-old girl who recently found herself in foster care and found herself living with a set of foster parents. She struggles with her gender identity and she is also a member of the queer community. When she chose to share this information with her foster parents, she was met with a lot of unhappiness and was asked to either conform to the family's ideals or she would be kicked out of the home. She ended up running away from the house, and her return to the foster home was contingent on her conforming to what they wanted her to think and act. She ended up being placed with a new foster home, but once again, this is in a rural area, so resources are limited. And on top of this, she's dealing with not only the trauma that she's experiencing with her own identity and with these foster families, but also being placed in foster care in the first area. So going in, I looked at a micro level because I focused on Gina. I originally had plans to work with more of a meso level in the community itself, but decided on micro. I was drawn to this case study because being a member of the queer community in rural Montana is not very much fun. Resources are limited to non existent. I feel like resources for the queer community are already extremely limited, and adding in living in a rural area, they really do become non existent. I really wanted to focus on mental health and especially depression and anxiety and the high rates that we see in the queer community compared to straight and cisgender individuals. So, one area of the core process that I feel was especially represented in this case study is actually action. This was a little bit tricky because there are so many players in Gina's case, but I still felt like there is a lot of action and accompaniment that needed to happen. So, first off, meaning. I think her identity is a huge factor of this. We're navigating our personal meaning and fighting our personal meaning individually, but we're often influenced by those around us. So I had her coming into her own meaning and how this is going to be defined extremely differently from her foster family, and how even though they'll never understand it from her level, even if they're supportive, they're not going to understand it from the same place that Gina is coming from. Moving on to context, situationally, there was a lot going on with this case study. She is being placed in foster care. She's living in a rural area. She's kind of almost boxed in, according to the thin text, to these contextual situations. She's in foster care. She's underage. She can't leave. She's greatly influenced by her environment. This, I think, ties in directly to power. Once again, we have that she's 17, she's in foster care. Everything that she does, she has to run by her foster family and her caseworker. And I hate to say it, but she is somewhat at the mercy of them. Moving on to history. This one I kind of struggled with. I had her personal history coming into play because I had how she got into foster care in the first place, being that her one birth parent that she was living with was a substance abuser, and that is unfortunately how Gina ended up in this situation to begin. So, looking at her individual history, I had taking that experience, learning from it, and moving forward. Just because you have someone in your life that has a struggle with substance abuse doesn't mean that you're immune to it as well. But I just really implemented Gina looking at that moving forward. Possibility in this case is absolutely huge. There's so much going on here. I kind of had this set up so reunification wasn't looking like an option, but also that adoption or guardianship most likely was not going to happen before Gina aged out. Meaning, we are looking at what is she going to do when she ages out of the system. So we're looking at her finishing up her high school education, looking at secondary education, getting employed, looking at living independently. And a huge factor of this I saw as well is potentially moving out of this rural area to have way better access to more resources and more resources that are going to suit her. All right, thanks everyone.